This is a video about neoliberalism and education. So I want to talk about the impacts of neoliberalism on the education system, but in order to do that, you first need to understand what neoliberalism is. Neoliberalism is a powerful and complex economic, political, and cultural system that transfers market values into all aspects of life. Neoliberalism operates on rationality and governmentality that promotes competition, privatization, and personal responsibility. It is more than simply an ideology or a political or economic system, but it's a totality which affects everything, including politics, law, the economy, global relations, and the education system. In order to understand how the rise of neoliberalism has affected education, it's important to understand a little bit of the history of education first. The original purpose of education was to plant seeds in the minds of young people, seeds that would be nourished and developed and cultivated to grow individuals into people who would be able to participate as critically minded and thoughtful citizens in society, and who would work to make the world a better place. After World War II, there was a huge expansion of public education, as preparing students to contribute to democratic life became a major goal of society. It was seen as crucial that education became a public good that all individuals, regardless of class, race, or gender, had access to. However, in the 70s and the 80s, there began to be some resistance to some of the liberal ideas that had brought about this democratic thinking, and neoliberal reasoning started to emerge in response. But the rise of neoliberalism could only be achieved by changes in culture, and the best way seen to change culture was through the education system. In impacting schools, neoliberal education doesn't focus on schools collaborating to improve learning quality for all students. Instead, schools compete against each other for resources in a constant tug of war. Schools are also become increasingly standardized to measure accountability. This has occurred through the rise of standardized testing to measure effectiveness and progress. And it gives a message that everyone has to be learning the same thing at the same time. Curriculum is also narrowed to make standardization easier to implement, and the arts and the humanities are often cut to make room for teaching to the test. In addition to standardizing education, neoliberalism also deregulates education. In this way, the market deregulates education to allow for more choice through charters and private schools under the rationality that this will lead to better options for students. However, while more choice may seem like a good thing, it often leads to increased competition and inequality. Because of these changes in schools, teachers are greatly impacted by neoliberalism. Neoliberalism emphasizes traditional and formal schooling. Therefore, instructors are placed at the center of learning. Teachers are in control of learning, and as a result, the pressure is placed upon them to make achievements. Because they have to teach to the test, they're given little or no freedom to control their classrooms or curriculum, or little space to explore new pedagogy. Almost everything they do is under the control of the neoliberal state. In addition, whereas teachers throughout history have joined together to fight for their rights and improvement of their schools, teachers' unions are often diminished under neoliberal rationality. But perhaps the people who suffer the most in neoliberal education are the students themselves. While students enter school as free and playful and expressive children, their schooling experience that is uniform and competitive and results-driven often leads students to become stressed, disinterested, or even invisible. And these students feel powerless, trapped in a system where they feel like they have to accept neoliberal norms as given and unable to be challenged. Throughout the process of neoliberalism becoming infused in education, schools become factories where things like creativity, intelligence, and imagination are suppressed, and students are forced to fit into molds that ignore their unique backgrounds and personalities, and instead try to make them all the same. Human capital to contribute to the market and enhance global competition. However, the impacts of neoliberalism are not limited to schools, teachers, and learners. They change our whole world. Neoliberal rationality has deep and widespread consequences for schools and the way they function, as well as the experiences and lives of students. But not only that, because of how influential education is informing the generations who determine our futures, it impacts our world as a whole. While neoliberalism has had really damaging and destructive impacts on education, and hope may seem difficult, the reason neoliberal education has been able to change so much is because education is such a powerful tool. And I believe that it can be used to change things for the better when we challenge the neoliberal regime. We can pick up the pieces, refocus on what is really important, and give our students the knowledge and hope for changing the future for the better.
Some of us went out in the hill with a fancy automobile, no bills in the bank account filled up, in love with a love like love is real. Some of us wanna feel like Superman and shoot the kill.